All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about with the cardiovascular system is blood. This is chapter 18. So let's talk about the functions of blood. So blood, the first function of blood is for transport. So the blood transports things like oxygen and carbon dioxide, allows for gas exchange. It transports nutrients, so like, glucose. It transports chemicals, and that's things like, hormones, which we just looked at in chapter 17. The blood also functions in immunity, contains white blood cells. So white blood cells are the cells of the immune system. And it also functions in homeostasis. So like pH, ion balance, and body temperature. So what is blood? Well, hopefully you remember that blood is a connective tissue. It's a fluid connective tissue. And connective tissues are made of or contain a ground substance. Hopefully you remember that. Contains cells and fibers. So blood is sort of unique. It's a fluid ground substance, so it doesn't really have a lot of fibers, but it definitely has cells and it definitely has a ground substance. The ground substance is called plasma. And if you look at this, this is a picture of a test tube. And if we centrifuge blood and separate its components, it separates into plasma and its cells. So if we start with plasma, let's see what's in that stuff. Well, plasma is about 92% water. About 7% of it is proteins. So what kind of proteins? Well, we've got the main protein in there is called albumin. And albumin is a protein that floats around all the time in the blood, in the plasma. It has the largest effect on osmotic pressure. It carries things around like hormones and stuff like that. There's another type of protein in there. Here's another one, fibrinogen. And fibrinogen is a protein that contributes to blood clotting, so it's pretty important. There are antibodies that float around the blood. And they look like little Y's things, but these are proteins as well. And there are other proteins in there, but these proteins collectively are called plasma proteins. And they are essential in the health of a human or of any mammal. So what else is in there? Well, 1% we've got left It's just other stuff. So that's gonna be things like ions. So sodium, potassium, chlorine, bicarbonate, calcium. Okay, so those are in there as well. And of course, there's hormones in there, there's enzymes in there, all kinds of stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff inside the blood here. So what about the formed elements? Because this is the cell part of blood, of this connective tissue. These are the cells. The plasma is the ground substance. So the first kind of cell we have is going to be erythrocytes. And of course, these are red blood cells. And they function in gas exchange. And they're about, I think this is right, 44% of what blood is. And then there's also white blood cells, or leukocytes. And these function in immunity. And then we also have something called thrombocytes. And these are called platelets. And platelets are just little cell fragments. White blood cells are like full cells. They are nucleated. All right, and then red blood cells, if you remember or know, are more like discs because they don't have nuclei. A little strange here. So the white blood cells and thrombocytes make up about 1% of the blood. And that's right here. And this area right here is called the Buffy Coat. And it separates out from the red blood cells when we centrifuge the blood. So these are white blood cells and thrombocytes there. These down here, this 40%, this is about 1%. And down here are erythrocytes. So the last 55% of blood is made up of plasma. So all this stuff is in blood, and this stuff that's in blood is very important in the health and homeostasis of the body. So when you think of blood, we're going to talk a lot about this from now until the end of the semester, because that's how we get stuff, gases, nutrients, all of that to the different parts of the body is through vessels inside the blood. Not a lot happens in the blood, but we have that to get things to where they need to go. So the next thing we'll talk about erythrocytes and leukocytes, and talk about what they do.